Welcome back to the TBE podcast with your host Ollie Forsyth, founder of TBE, the global community of 35,000 budding entrepreneurs. Just before we dive into today's episode, if you are looking to start, grow, or fundraise for your business, we would love to hear from you. Please visit www.tbeclub.com and reach out to us. So in today's episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Christian Faes, the co-founder behind LendInvest. LendInvest is the property finance marketplace. So let's dive into the interview. So welcome to the TBE podcast. Today I'm joined by Christian Faes, founder of LendInvest. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Thank you for having me on the show.
My pleasure. How's your day going so far?
Not too bad. Yeah, pretty busy start to the day, but that's always good.
Awesome. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
For breakfast, I had granola from the detox kitchen downstairs.
Nice. And what is your favourite company?
With banana.
And what is the one thing you would have done differently before you turned 20?
Would have done differently before 20. I don't know if I would have done that much differently, to be honest. I probably was not too focused on academics when I was younger, so I didn't take school perhaps as seriously as what I could have. But then at the end, I don't think that kind of mattered. So I don't know if I'd do that much different.
So just diving into your background, you were a lawyer, city boy. Do you miss those old times, or?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a city boy, certainly, in that sense. But so I was a lawyer, I worked at a Magic Circle firm, and then briefly in-house with an investment bank here in London. But before that, I was a real estate lawyer in Australia. So sort of spent a number of years as a lawyer, and I think that was really good training, I think, for sort of going on sort of an entrepreneurial journey. But having said that, I certainly don't miss the city, and I certainly don't miss being a lawyer. I think it's a really difficult profession, actually, and I think there's a lot of stress on sort of junior lawyers to sort of go up that career path these days. So that's and it just wasn't for me really. So, but great training, but no, I don't miss it.
Very nice. And so you launched LendInvest back in 2013. And the idea was to provide easy access to finance for people buying properties.
Yeah.
What was the original idea behind that?
Yeah, so sort of taking a step back before that, actually. So my co-founder and I, we set up a business in late 2008, which was previously called Montello. And that was just focusing on short-term mortgages. So we were a really uninteresting offline business, I would say. And I think at that time, I'd recently moved back from Australia to London, set up this business, saw an opportunity for investors to earn an investment return across that asset class, a secured superior return, and certainly a need for borrowers in the sort of financial crisis where everything was sort of being disrupted, and the short-term mortgage space was no different. Having said that, 2008 was probably a lot worse than what we envisaged, and certainly it wasn't...
not the best time.
Not the best time to be starting up. So I think we kind of set up the business and went, oh, shit, this is really bad. So we just sort of stuck at it. And it was... So if we move forward then to sort of 2012, 2013... we had established that short-term mortgage lending business, but we're always interested in technology and how that could play a role in sort of what we did. And it was the peer-to-peer platforms that caught our attention, and then we were going to meetups and stuff in the East End. There's a great meetup called London New Finance, which was kind of before fintech was a thing. It wasn't even a badge, but it started to get momentum then, and so we thought, well, let's try and sort of get involved with technology, and we set up a platform to allow investors to invest in our loans, and it was through that actually we started to get a lot of investment inflows. We started to get attention from VCs and sort of external investors, and kind of we built the foundation offline and then sort of took the business online. So the proposition was around allowing investors to invest online and to get a decent return, and then for borrowers to just have a much better experience. So the average mortgage in the UK takes 3 months. It's an entirely offline industry. It's kind of it's something that needs to change, and so alternative lenders using technology like us, we think, are the future.
So if you had a young entrepreneur sitting right next to you now, which I guess you do,
yeah.
If you could just summarise LendInvest in 30 seconds, what would it be?
LendInvest is an online marketplace platform for property finance. Allowing investors to invest in our loans and making it a much better experience for borrowers to get a mortgage.
So you mentioned you launched in 2013. Has the business model always stayed the same, or was it adapted over the years?
It's definitely adapted, and I think that's one of the biggest things. When Ian and I sort of having a beer at the end of the day, which kind of doesn't happen that often, but we sort of say that that's one of the keys to our success. Is I think we've never really sat still and said, "Oh, this is a great business. Let's just keep doing this." It's always been around, well, how can we do it better? How are other people doing it? What do our customers really want? How can we fund ourselves in a cheaper way? How can we sort of provide better products and so on? So I think it's just never really being happy with where you're at, and I think always sort of being comfortable with pivoting the business model or changing what you're doing, and we've just always been doing that.
And how has the business model changed?
Yeah. So the business is dramatically different. Back in 2013, we were just a short-term lender. We thought technology would just be a way for investors to invest. Now we're in a whole range of specialist mortgage lending products, lending from 1 month through to 30 years in duration. We have banks. We have a fund in Luxembourg. We have an online platform. A very diverse universe of investors coming into our platform. So that's dramatically different from where we were just 5 years ago.
And you briefly touched upon Ian Thomas, your co-founder.
Yeah.
Has having a co-founder really helped you get to where you are today?
I think definitely, yeah. I think the reality is it's a tough journey. So having someone with you, I think, is something that is helpful, and also. I'm not sure if you met Ian, but we do complement each other very well. He's very thoughtful and diligent, and very detail orientated. Where I'm kind of perhaps less thoughtful, more big picture, a bit more boisterous, and kind of like a different personality. Well, maybe, yeah, but I think you need someone there that's actually on top of the detail as well. So I think we work well together.
And how did you and Ian first meet?
We met through a mutual friend, actually. So we didn't know each other particularly well, which was kind of an interesting thing. And I guess in many respects, it was something that evolved in terms of, it just kind of, it happened, and then it was kind of working, and then it kind of, snowballs from there.
So one of your main investors is Atomico.
Yes.
How much have you raised to date, and how have you done it?
Yeah, so we've raised a lot across debt and equity for the business. So it's over £1 billion now. Atomico were our main external equity investor, and I think it's just hard work to raise capital. But having said that, we're a lender, so capital is the lifeblood of our business. If we didn't have capital, we wouldn't be in business for long. So I think we've got very good at raising institutional capital, particularly on the debt side. On the equity side, we didn't raise any external equity for the first 7 years of building our business. And I think, one thing I would definitely recommend to entrepreneurs is don't take external capital if at all possible. I think, too often I meet young entrepreneurs these days, and they're too focused on, I want to get this VC into my business, or I think they'll fund my Series A, or I've got this seed investor, all the rest of it. That shouldn't be the primary focus. It should be around sort of serving a customer, driving revenue, and ultimately a bit of profit from it, or at least generating surplus excess cash that you can reinvest and continue to build the business. And I think the reality is that serves you as a founder better as well. So Ian and I still own about 70% of this business, which a lot of founders these days, I see they get to that final exit and they own sort of 5% of the business, which is great. They're no doubt, in some respects, bigger businesses, and we have probably taken longer to get to here than if we had a huge amount of capital given to us. But also, I think if you don't have external capital on the equity side too early, you're forced to find ways to make things happen. And I think whilst that's difficult at the time, it actually makes you a stronger, better business in due course. And
how did you meet your first investors?
So first investors was just total hustle. So it was 2008, 2009. It's going to meetups, going to events, meeting with, taking any introduction you can possibly get from lawyers, accountants, whoever it is. Sort of endless unreturned phone calls and sort of coffee meetings with people who are sort of vaguely interested in what you're doing, and then kind of you get to a point where you get lucky, and then sort of you build from there. So it was pretty tough in the early days to find investors.
And your lender investors, how do you build good relationships with those?
With the borrower side,
borrowers, yeah.
The borrowers is challenging as well. So I think it's easy to find people to lend money to. I think it's more difficult to find good borrowers to lend to, where a business can form a genuine relationship where we can lend to them not just once because we're kind of able to lend to them, but in a situation where actually we can form a meaningful relationship over a number of years where we lend to them multiple times a year, and that's the type of borrower we target. And so that's very relationship driven. So it is having good business development managers internally that have a good personal relationship, and it's building technology that ultimately makes it a sticky experience for that customer. So there's tools, there's calculators and things like that where it's just easier for them to transact with us. And I think if we do that, then they do sort of think, oh well, I won't bother going across the road because it's just very easy here. And I think that's ultimately what people want. I mean, we often say people don't sit down at the pub and say, oh, I've got a great mortgage. It's just not something people talk about. So I think if you can just make it easy and seamless, then that's ultimately what customers want.
And are you seeing more and more young people coming to you trying to get money, or?
So we typically focus on professional borrowers at the moment. We do have our eye on sort of being a whole of market home loan lender in due course, but at the moment it's very professional. So they're usually sort of slightly older, I would say. So yeah, that's probably not really a trend that we see so much.
And do you think more young people are gonna maybe do they actually want to own the house anymore? Are you saying do they want to own assets? And where does that leave you guys?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think young people do want to own their own house today, and I think that's a multi-generational sort of aspiration that people have to own your own home. I do have a personal view. It's certainly not a company view, but a personal view that I think that probably possibly changes over time in a few generations' time. Like, will my kids aspire to own their own home? I almost hope they don't, because I think it is something that is increasingly becoming out of reach of some people, and actually it's not necessarily the best investment. I think we all hear stories of our parents. They bought their house for X tens of thousands and now it's worth $1 million plus. I don't think you buy a house now for $1 million plus and it's worth tens of millions in the years ahead. So I think that kind of that dramatic capital gain that investors have had in the last generation or so, I don't think that goes on indefinitely. So actually for some people who are really struggling to buy a home, I think they shouldn't feel bad about themselves. And I think, well, some young people do. I talk to the team here. They're sort of so desperate to try and get on the housing ladder. But actually, go and put your money in the stock market or make other investments. And some of that's, we were talking before we came online about, financial literacy and people just being aware of other investment opportunities other than just owning your own home. But like I say, that's kind of, I think that's a big topic that perhaps evolves over time.
So as a company perk for working for LendInvest, do you get an easier mortgage?
You actually don't at the moment, but it's something we're very, very keen to try and do. So we've talked about it a lot internally because we don't do home loans per se at the moment. It is a few years away, but it's definitely something I'd like, in sort of next 4 or 5 years, that if you worked at LendInvest, you'd get a LendInvest mortgage.
So for some free marketing, are you looking to hire anyone soon?
Yeah, we're always looking to hire and sort of looking for good, talented people with experience, or if you're less experienced, then just hungry to learn and sort of, have a sort of a startup mindset. So I think, we are looking for people that have a bit of entrepreneurial flair, keen to sort of get their hands dirty and just learn. So at the junior level, and then across the board, from engineers through to business development managers on the sales side to marketing and all the rest of it. Like across the business, we're always looking for new good people.
So if you could take yourself back 5 years when you were just starting LendInvest, what's the one thing you wish you knew? One
thing I wish I knew that it would work out.
Yeah.
Because I think in those early days you do think like shit. This is all in and like this might not work, and I think that's extremely stressful. And I think actually if you could look forward and say, well, it's probably going to be all right there'd be less anxiety and stress around it working out. Maybe that stress and anxiety is kind of necessary in some respects to sort of push you to do it. But I think you'd like to go back and just say, look, it'll be okay. Just continue on the same path.
So you talk about stress. What's a typical day like for you, and how do you relax?
So I think the day's less stressful now for me, in the sense that I think we've got really good people in the business. So, when you're a business of 10 people, I think it is hugely stressful. I don't even say even like sort of 30, 40 people. It's stressful because you've got to know everything that's going on with the business, and you've got to be the master of everything. And because you're an entrepreneur and you do things yourself, you're kind of stepping on people's toes, and you're sort of working, 7 days a week, 24/7. At the business size now, we're sort of 150, sort of grow to 200 pretty quickly. We've got really good people in each department head. It's a much more thoughtful sort of organisational structure. So I think that it's much less stress now. Typical days kind of come into the office sort of 7:38. Try and catch up on emails. I sit next to my co-founder, so we'll be chatting about things. And then sort of meetings will start from sort of 8:39. We try and start internal meetings from 8:30, and then sort of it'll be a range of internal meetings with and external meetings like investors, prospective investors, sort of stakeholder management. And I actually find the days really exciting. They're quite varied, from meeting a new investor that might be sort of in town from overseas, and you get to hear what's going on there, through to sort of dealing with a new marketing campaign, or doing a podcast and those sorts of things, and meeting interesting people. So I definitely enjoy my days.
So talking about challenges, what's been your biggest challenge for you, both for the business and for you personally?
So I think the biggest challenge has been. That's a tough one. I mean, I think there's been lots of challenges. I think scaling has been really challenging. So I think when we started off, we're a small business. You get a bit of traction. That's really, really difficult to get that initial traction. But I think you can also get to a point where you get to a size where it works. It's kind of the business is washing its face and all the rest of it, but taking it to the next level has been really, really difficult. And that's where I'd say investors like Atomico have been extremely helpful, because they've been on that journey 100 times before, and particularly, being a founder-led VC, I think is really important. They understand the highs and lows of it. So I think scaling has been the biggest challenge, and personally that's the same. So I think, you do, and I talk about the early days where you're kind of doing everything, but you're kind of the master of none. I'm a lawyer by background. We didn't need a lawyer when we were 10 people. So you're not well equipped for every job that you're doing, probably. And over time, it's just bringing good people in and then empowering them and trusting them it's just sort of you giving birth to your baby, and then you're saying, you run marketing, and then like, actually, I'm not going to interfere with that too much, although I'm sure they wouldn't agree with that. Or accounting, certainly I'm not, you get a good CFO on board. So I think personally, it's just going through that journey and sort of allowing things to evolve and ultimately letting go, but then sort of making sure that you're the one that holds it all together as well at the end.
And do you do all the legal work for your business? Or?
No, thank God. No, we've got 3 in-house lawyers, general counsel I work very closely with, have huge respect for her. She's really, really good, much better lawyer than me. We've got very good, very extremely highly paid external lawyers that help us as well. The laws are changing each day, and I think our businesses, I would say we're super complex, but it's quite a complex business now with, a fund out of Luxembourg and sort of jurisdictional issues and so on. So no, it's definitely not for me.
So you talked about some of the lowest moments, but what's been some of the highest moments you've had?
The highest moments? I think there's been lots as well. I think certainly internally and I try and sort of make sure it's not the case when we raise capital. I think there's certainly a feel of external validation, and like there's a sense of pride and excitement around that. I try not to make that the case, because I think that's someone giving you money to make an investment to take the business further, and it's kind of the start of the journey for that investor. And actually, it's kind of raising capital should not be the benchmark of success. Having said that, I think each year there's highs. I mean, I think last year was an interesting one. We listed our retail bond on the London Stock Exchange. I think in terms of a process that was cool. You do a ceremony where you go and open the London Stock Exchange, and we had a bunch of our team that had worked on that project or had been early members of the business, and It's kind of like you go down there and there's a whole ceremony around it. I think that was kind of a highlight that you look back on and think, we've got some great photos from that, and that was a cool day. But then, you know what? Everyone's in the office by 9:30, and kind of it was largely forgotten probably by the end of the day. So you just kind of crack on, yeah.
Very nice. What was that feeling like when you listed?
It was cool. Yeah, listed the bond. So we haven't listed the business yet, but listed the bond. Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was a sense of achievement. It's one of those capital raisings where it's very binary. You know, it kind of, you get it away or you don't. So it's, I think some capital raising you can get some investors on board, or it's kind of, you can have medium success with it. That's kind of like it's all in or not. So yeah, it was good. It was a good sense of achievement.
So I have a pretty strong feeling you're going to IPO at some point, and it has been written about in the media.
It has, yeah.
When's it going to happen?
Well, I think, we make no secret about us working towards wanting to be a public company. I think that's part of us trying to be an open and transparent business with everything that we do. For some years now, we've tried to act as if we're a public company. So we do an annual report each year and sort of almost pretend we are without sort of having quite reached the size. And I think that's a good internal sort of process for everyone to think like that. For us, in terms of when it happens, I think we'll do it when we're ready is kind of the answer. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, but it's not something that's going to be in the next month or so.
How big do you want to be before you IPO?
Yeah, so that's some of the question comes back to that, and I think you want to be big enough that for investors that come in, there's a long way for the business to grow. Look, it's called an initial public offering, so it's kind of like it is the start of the journey as a public company, and I think internally trying to have everyone think about it as just something that happens on the journey for us becoming a big and dominant player in our market. I think we want to be bigger than what we are now, but also not necessarily dramatically bigger.
What's the plan for the next 12 to 24 months? 12 to
24 months is really just to make sure everyone's focused on delivering. So I think as a business, we're extremely well funded, we're profitable, and I think we're very well placed in a very big market to be the disruptor. There's lots of people that have had lots of attention around them, and VCs throwing money at them. That I think won't talk about others, but I think we are well placed to be the winner, and we're very focused on that. So that means really focusing on buy-to-let at the moment, making sure we get more market share in that space, continuing to build out our technology, and really innovating with that, and making sure we stay as a super efficient business, because that's ultimately where the value is in the technology, and then sort of looking to trying to execute on that home loan market. So within a 24-month time frame, that's kind of where we'd want to be pretty close to be launching a home loan product within that period.
So outside LendInvest, are you doing any angel investing? What are you doing in your spare time?
Yeah, so I do a bit of angel investing. I find it hard because I want to do more than what I do. It's just, I guess I'm time constrained as much as anything. So I have invested as an LP in a bunch of different funds that are sort of focused on early stage technology investing, but I've also made a number of direct investments myself. I try and sort of stick to fintech or sort of areas that I feel like can add more value. If it's just me giving money, I feel like that's kind of, that's nice, but I like to sort of perhaps be able to add some value, and sometimes that's just around making introductions or sort of making a valuable contribution, but not getting in the way, because I certainly don't have the time for it. So yeah.
Cool. So what is your BHAG for the next 5 years?
My BHAG? What's a BHAG?
So it's your big, hairy, audacious goal.
Wow.
For the next 5 years. For you personally.
For personally?
Yeah.
I think it is to, I don't know how long I spend in this business personally. Hopefully it's a number of years from here. But hopefully I can leave it in a way that, it's a business that lives on for many decades, if not longer, in the future, and I leave it in good hands, and I leave the investors well looked after, and everyone sort of feeling that was a really good experience with being a part of this business, working in it, investing in it, borrowing from us, whatever it may be. It's kind of like it's the gold standard of how things should be done in the future.
So would you like to maybe get to an IPO and then maybe move on to other things?
And then sit on the beach. Yeah.
Go on holiday?
Yeah. No, probably not. I mean, I think, I don't look it, but I'm pretty young. Not as young as you, anywhere near as young as you. But I think I wouldn't know what I was doing if I wasn't here, to be honest. I'd be bored out of my head. So I think that IPO, like I say, is definitely not the end. It's kind of just part of the journey. And I think, I hope that I would still be in the business for a number of years beyond that.
How big can you take it?
We can be massive. We can be the near-term goal, and one of our company values is we're playing to win. I want to be the biggest mortgage lender in the country, and I think once we've achieved that, let's think about other things.
Awesome. Exciting times ahead.
Yeah.
So just to finish off, what is the one piece of advice you would give to Christian, age 20?
Age 20. I think it would actually probably be stop messing around with this legal business and just get on with actually building a business.
Awesome. Well, Christian, thanks so much for your time. Exciting times ahead and good luck with it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. So another inspiring entrepreneur on today's show. I hope you found some useful tips what Christian has mentioned during today's interview. If you are looking to start, grow or fundraise for your business, we would love to hear from you. Please go over and visit www.tbeclub.com where you can get in touch with us. And just before we wrap up today's interview, we've got so many more VCs and entrepreneurs coming on the show. We have VCs in Singapore, America, Hong Kong and UK. We have entrepreneurs such as Simon Woodruff, the founder of the Yo Sushi Company. We have James Watt, founder of Brewdog Beer, and we have many, many more coming on the show. So, to avoid missing out on a further episode, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much, and good luck with your ventures.